It's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
You bet, Joe.
So let's begin our journey into your work by asking you this. 5 years ago, with this pandemic, it changed our lives, did so many
Mhm.
things for all of us. How did you get through that era, and how has it influenced the way that you live today?
And that was actually the inflection point of my career. I knew I didn't want to work corporate jobs. My background, I'll keep it really quick here, is 20 years in tech and 15 years investing, and I was working for a large corporation. And I'm like, I could be doing this the next 20 years. And I always wanted, I tried a few businesses in my life, a few failures. And I'm like, I have to do something. And it's now or never. And long story short, 4 years prior to that, so around 2016, I started working on an Excel sheet that helps me invest in the stock market. It really rolls up to a simplified rating system inspired by the traffic light. But yeah, in 2020, I'm like, I I got to do this. It's now or never type situation. And I decided to move forward. And 5 years later, fortunately, that business is Tykr is the business name. We've got over 12,000 customers in 50 countries.
So let's get into the marrow of your business and what you do on a daily basis for work. And to do that, kids are the truth serum. If I put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, 12 years old, it's career day, and one of the kids wants to know what you do for a living, how do you answer them?
We help people buy and sell stocks with confidence.
So, what did you want to be when you were a kid? What was your dream job?
Like anybody else, I think it changed so many times. I always wanted to be, I guess I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. There were signs of like inventing things. I think in those days, going back 30, 40 years, they would call an inventor, not an entrepreneur. But that was the goal. I wanted to do something. At one point, end of high school, I got really good at architecture, all the tech uh, skills. But getting into like model building and drawing when I got to college, I was terrible at, and there were no computer classes. And I'm like, what's the irony here? Like, am I going to be building models for clients? So I left that, and that took me in a different path. But yeah, yeah, I guess you could say inventor, then architect, then back to inventor slash entrepreneur, and that's pretty much where I'll be the rest of my life, most likely.
So, when did you know that being an entrepreneur, what was the first job or first business where you knew that you found your calling? It all made sense.
Gosh, it actually it took a few swings at bat to figure out the right type of business. Like, for example, I worked one job out of college. Long story short, I got a switch from architecture to fine arts, which can get you a career in the movie industry, the TV industry, or ad agencies. I decided to stay in the Midwest. Let's focus on ad agencies. So worked for like an ad agency marketing firm focused on real estate. Did that for a year, figured out the business model, then went to do that. But that was kind of learning the hard way. That's not a scalable business, like a service business, building software or websites or producing video for customers. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be a business owner. I'm like, I ended up hating that business. And I didn't have any other choices because it was during the recession. Like, nobody's going to hire some kid right out of school with no experience. Oh, you're building your own business? Like, yeah, we're not going to hire you. So I had to kind of see it through. But yeah, then it was after that first business, we actually did grow in our last year. We went through a merger. A larger agency approached us, and I during that time period of those 4 years, I got to work with a lot of different types of businesses, whether it's um, restaurants or hair salons or car dealerships, e-commerce. But the top of the food chain I figured out is SaaS, software as a service subscription models. I'm like, that is the business model I want. Looking at the MailChimps and the Constant Contacts at the time, Salesforce, and I'm like, I need to do that, but I didn't have any great ideas. So it took a decade since then to come up with idea. But yeah, I guess I had to do things the wrong way
Uh-huh.
before figuring out what to do the right way and the right type of business model I wanted to focus on.
So when we like right now, these are very interesting times for the stock market. I've
Mhm.
noticed that it's really soaring, it's getting to record heights, but the economy, all the other indicators are kind of in a state of flux. What's going on right now?
Yeah, so unemployment is it's still relatively low, but there's still a lot of people that are they're a bit underemployed. It's a little It's kind of like a derivative or an echo of what happened in '08, '09, '10. You had the recession, but then people kind of like they're in this state of funk. For example, in 2008, the recession actually only lasted 9 months, but people feel like, because of emotions, they feel like it lasted like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So we had the recession of 22. Now businesses are doing very well because the market is going well, but there are a lot of businesses that are still not hiring as much. I know there's kind of like this stagnant period, especially in IT jobs. Not a lot of software engineers because AI.
Yeah.
My background is project management, so that's not as popular. It will always be needed, but it's not hiring like it was in the mid 2010s.
Yeah.
Excuse me, mid 2010s. There's assortment of jobs there that they're just not as in demand as they used to be. However, I am seeing kind of a trend happen where trade jobs, they in the next 10 years, they're going to be really in demand and very high paying. But we're just not seeing that quite yet in 2025.
So are you optimistic with where we're going with the economy? And I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
doomsday speaking going on with the tariffs and everything that happened, but the reality of it is, I mean, are you
Yeah,
hopeful?
I'm not concerned. I'm actually very optimistic. So the big indicators are in the right places. Like for example, inflation was at 9% in 22. Well, you want to be between 2 and 3%. We're sitting at like high twos right now, which is
Okay.
great.
Yeah.
You have interest rates on buying a home here in the States. It's certainly come down. It's not perfect like at 3%, but it's around 6%, maybe just over. So it's moving in the right direction. So that's good. Tariffs, we've become desensitized to it because, and I'll give you context here, it was 2017 and 18 when Trump did what I call Trump Tariff War One, and then Trump Tariff War Two happened here, and it was really 24 and 25. Well, you you do it two or three times, well, now the market becomes used to the behavior and it's not going to be impacted when, for example, Trump were to say, like, I'm going to raise tariffs on this country. Market's not going to freak out like it was doing. That's a common behavior trait to the stock market. So yeah, long story short, markets it's doing very well, and I
Yeah.
will say it's going to continue to do well. We would need a geopolitical event that's pretty severe to cause a pullback.
So who's been a hero for you? Who's been an inspirational force that's allowed you to find your footing and to find your place?
Mm. My parents, both very hardworking. They taught me a lot about work ethic and doing the right thing when nobody's looking. My dad was a salesman, and my mother worked with people with disabilities, or a better way to phrase it would be people with abilities. And my dad had a saying, he was, do that which generates revenue first. It's all about prioritizing what generates the most revenue for the business. And that was a common thread that, yes, applicable to sales, but you can apply it to your life as an entrepreneur. So yeah, they're probably my biggest inspiration.
So in the realm of entrepreneurship, who is an entrepreneur that's alive now that you would love to hang out with, talk to, have a lunch that might help you on your journey?
Oh, I really like Satya Nadella. I think he's a sharp guy, but a very calm demeanor. I would love to like shadow him for a day and see how is he talking to his C-suite as well as middle management and even, employees. What do those conversations look like? So there's numerous I'm always following CEOs or business leaders, and he's probably at the top of the list. I'd love to have a conversation with him.
So the thing about the stock market is that it can be a risky realm. You never are quite sure. It's like betting on the horse or the lottery or whatever. I mean, not as much, but
Yeah.
there's a level of risk that goes into it. What was the first big risk that you took in the stock market that actually turned out to be all flowers?
Well, I'll zoom out for a second. And when I started investing in 2010 or 11, I actually started the riskier route, which is angel investing. That's investing in private companies. That is very risky because you don't have the financial statements like you do in the public market. So I was doing a little bit of that, making some money, losing some money, and barely keeping up with the market. Well, in 2015, 16 is when I took a step back, and you'll appreciate some moves I made here. But at that point, I kind of had a realization that, hey, Warren Buffett and the late Charlie Munger were able to consistently beat the market. In fact, Warren Buffett has stated that if he were managing $10 million, he could make 50% per year. And in comparison, the S&P 500 typically does about 8 to 10%. I'm like, whoa, I mean, that's blowing the market away. So I knew at that point he's not using feelings or emotions to pick stocks. He's not a gambling man, nor was Charlie, which tells us that they're starting with some sort of logic, some sort of math. So that was the inception to Ticker, which is looking at the total view of the mathematics, like the income statement, cash flow statement, and balance sheet. I won't go into too much detail here, but I found out that the stock market is actually completely the opposite of private investing. It is very low risk. That gives you that for people to hear that it's like, what? It's low, it's extremely low risk because you have public companies and they have the transparency. They have to provide that in those financial statements. And what Ticker does is really cut through the clutter and determines what's good and what's bad. So I actually would say the stock market is very, very low risk because you're not investing in stocks, you're investing in businesses. And businesses are in business to provide problems or solve problems for their customers.
Yeah. So how hard do you have to work to keep up with the market, all the marketing forces, the trends? I mean, because
Mhm.
you're an entrepreneur, you got to keep things together as a businessman, but you also have to kind of ride a wave. You're a surfer out there in the ocean. How much of your day is parlay between both?
Well, I fortunately, thanks to inspiration from Warren and Charlie, and even a guy by the name of Phil Town, as Phil teaches, it should be 15 minutes a week, and we engineered Ticker. It's 15 minutes a week. In fact, I will literally I keep investing every week. Just a little bit peppering into the market because you want to be continuously dollar cost averaging. But I will spend, if not 15 minutes a week, it's like 15 minutes every 2 weeks. It doesn't take a lot of time because I've got a platform now that does it for me. But there are people that your question is leading in the right direction, which is a lot of people they believe when you're investing, you need to be looking at charts and graphs and researching information 8 hours a day. It's exactly the opposite of that. And I'll make one more comment here. We are focused on investing. We are not focused on trading. Trading is high risk and requires looking at charts and graphs and information for 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day. Investing, you're not working for money like you are with trading. You're making money work for you. So fortunately, it requires a lot less time.
I remember those viral clips of Jeff Bezos when he would be on Leno or one of those late night shows, and they would laugh at his business model. You mean you're not making this much money and you're putting all this work in and you're driving around a Honda? How much did he hoodwink us with how good things are going for him now?
Well, that's the reality of a tech startup. With my first business, a service business, you can get off the ground and start making money pretty quickly, but your scalability is very limited. Whereas a tech business, and I'll just be fully transparent. Like the first 3 years of Ticker, I didn't take any salary. Year four was minimum wage. How many people are pumped to make minimum wage over the age of 40? I don't know how many people are excited for that.
Yeah.
Year five, a slight increase, but not even keeping up with the average. But it's like Bezos was the same situation is if you raise a bunch of capital from people, then sure you can pay yourself a modest salary. But in most cases, you're looking at this end game with a tech startup, and those first few years are you can't focus on your salary, I'll put it that way. But most people, that right there will cut the great majority of the population of the world out of the equation. Like, I don't want to be an entrepreneur. I don't want to make minimum wage, but you got to see the vision. You got to see the forest through the trees.
So if you were to take a picture book of your life up to this point and walk into another room in your house and run into like the 15-year-old version of you and show that version of you the life you've lived, would that young version of you believe it?
I think so. I was always a weird kid. Like I've got, I'm highly creative, but also highly analytical, and how those two worlds combine, I never get it. But Yeah, I always felt out of place in school. I hated school. The concept of sitting down, staring forward, being obedient and being taught. I don't learn that way. Like I have to learn on my own. And I had a class like that in late high school as architecture where the teacher didn't teach anything. I won't, this is funny, so I have to share and then we'll get back on track. But
Yeah.
he wouldn't teach anything. He would hand you a book. He would say, get through chapters 2 or 3, and I'm going to look at ESPN. If you got any questions, don't bother me. I'm like, this is my kind of teacher, like free reign, baby. So, and I became the kid in class that I would get through the 2 chapters and then I'd go on to the next chapter and the next chapter. And soon this teacher, he would just say, any students out there got any questions? Still don't come to me. Go to Tepper. He's your guy. And and that's how I learn.
Yeah.
And so my brain, I just and having conversations with kids at even through grade school, middle school, high school, it was always difficult because I'm like, I would always feel like, I feel like I'm getting dumber in this moment. It's like that moment in Tommy Boy when he does the pitch, and literally everyone in this room is now dumber for
Yeah.
having listening to
Exactly.
you.
And it happens a lot in our modern world, that's for sure. So that's a perfect segue into my next question, which is
Yeah.
this. If you walked into a room of everybody that knows you in a business sense, as an
Mhm.
entrepreneur, as a business leader, clients, and you go to a podium in front of that room and you tell them a fun story about your life, first concert you went to, a wonderful trip you've been on, jumping out of an airplane, climbing a mountain,
Mhm.
some kind of fun thing that would humanize you a little bit to that group, what fun story would you tell that room?
Gosh, I've got so many crazy stories of like traveling and doing things. I guess what comes to mind is a fun story of like kind of being out of place in the world and kind of laughing at the situation. Some buddies and I were traveling in the Bahamas. It's believe me when I say Bahamas, it's not as glamorous as you think. It's like think of it desert, very limited towns and higher priced food because getting food to an island is very difficult and expensive. But anyway, we were doing hiking around these islands. We had a friend down there that had a boat that took us to a deserted island. We're like, yeah, let's go camp on a deserted island. Again, not as glamorous as people would think.
Yeah.
And we start like, all right, we're gonna do some grilling out. We're making a big bonfire, and I start tipping over logs and realize we are surrounded by scorpions. And I'm like, I had said, fellas, we're not alone here. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, look down. But that was the moment, like, yeah, just be careful where you're at. And one of those deals where we had each our own tent and zip up to the top,
Yeah.
not the bottom, so the creepy crawlies don't enter. But it was a fun little story where, yeah, it's kind of makes you realize like is this how I go? This
Yeah.
is this is the moment.
So being in Kansas City, I'm not familiar. I mean, I'm not familiar with how bad a scorpion sting is. Is it lethal enough to end your life?
Well, it depends, I guess. And I'm no expert on scorpions or
Right.
spiders or any of those, but like here in the Midwest, you've got black widow, brown recluse, which they can take you out. But
Yeah.
scorpions, I think there are a few, but it's probably the same situation. The great majority, it's gonna sting, but that's not the day you go. But still, it's
Yeah.
like here in the Midwest, we don't have scorpions. So when
Right.
we see something like that, it's like, okay, all right, that's kind of terrifying.
Yeah. I do have a good friend that moved to Vegas that mentioned something was like, just keep your eyes out. And I'm like, man, I've seen enough movies from Hollywood as a kid. I don't want to get stung. I have no interest in it,
Seriously.
you know,
Yeah.
at all. So,
Yeah.
of all of these adventures you've been on, all of this entrepreneurial success, everything that you've experienced, what are you ultimately the proudest of in this life?
Not selling out. I've had similar questions like that with building this tech startup, Tykr. There have been few circumstances when people have come to us with advertising opportunities, for example, with crypto coins that nobody's heard of, that would probably lose my customers a lot of money, and even precious metals. Precious metals historically have not kept up with the market. And I had to say no to the money because I could not, I would not feel good promoting those products to my customers. It reminds me of the whole FTX situation a few years ago when celebrities and athletes and they're getting paid a fortune to promote this. And I'm like, are you nuts? Like, you didn't see the forest through the trees. Like, this is an exchange based in the Bahamas or somewhere down there. That just right away like a red flag to me.
Yeah.
And we saw that story in it. But yeah, I never sold out. And again, that goes back to my folks that do the right thing when nobody's looking. And if it takes longer, but you're doing the right thing, that's worth it. So,
I kind of think about that show Undercover Boss. I always love those viral clips,
oh,
Just do the
love
right
it.
thing.
Yeah.
And and when they come in and the boss sees you, it's like there were so many examples of that, of just having integrity and we just unfortunately in the media we see so many bad examples of things like that, but there are so many good business minds. There's so many good humans that are out there doing that good work,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Delayed
know?
gratification is a factor. It's self-discipline. I mean, there's numerous traits I lean to, and it's not easy. I'm not going to say
Yeah.
it's easy. Like there's moments like, gosh, I could really use that paycheck, but gotta say no.
Yeah. Yeah,
Gotta
for
say no.
sure.
You know?
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Just a real dude. I can talk. I think if anybody meets me, realize that I'm not trying to be somebody I'm not. I'm not superficial. I'm not the guy that's gonna be, driving the fancy sports car and having a yacht. That's not me. I'm kind of an outdoorsman. So there's that factor. So yeah, I'm just kind of a real dude. I'll talk to anybody.
So I gotta know, since you mentioned the cars and everything, what was the first big purchase that you made based on making money as an entrepreneur where you're like, uh-oh, this is big, but you always wanted it and it was heart pounding. What was that first thing you bought?
Yeah, so I was a car guy, and then you understand the devaluation process of a vehicle when
Yeah.
it gets off the lot and over time. But yeah, it was actually when I went through that merger, I started working for large corporations, and you immediately get a salary bump with that. But I went to buy a car. I was a big fan of or still am, the Matrix and Matrix Reloaded. Revolutions, the third one wasn't as good, but Revelations, I forgot the name. But
Yeah.
yeah, that second one advertised the Cadillac CTS.
Okay.
And if you remember the chase scenes, and I'm like, that's a sharp looking car. So yeah, first decent salary, I went to buy a CTS, and then realized it was a piece of junk.
Right. Advertised well. So if anyone wants to get involved with Tykr, they want to reach out, they have questions, any of the good business in your world, where do they go?
Yeah, simple. Go to tykr.com, tykr.com.
Okay, cool. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you, Joe. This is
Cool.
great.